Hey everyone, it's Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Today we're joined by Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI. Our final look at Steelers Ravens and why defensive discipline will be paramount in this matchup. We got clips from Cam Heyward talking about that in the Steelers locker room. All of our Week 11 NFL picks, keys for the offense to score, and our final predictions for Steelers Ravens, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com. Get started. As I said before, we are joined by Jenna Harner herself back here. She's, of course, from Channel 11 WPXI. Jenna, it's Steelers Ravens week, which means there's a lot going on. It's rivalry week. We've heard the trash talk. We've heard Patrick Queen talk about it. And now we're just 2 days away from these two teams throwing down the first AFC North matchup for the Steelers of the season.
I can't tell you how excited I am for this matchup for so many reasons, but I have heard so many people talk in Pittsburgh this week about how this rivalry feels so renewed again because it's been so lopsided for the last handful of years. And not that, I mean, every time Steelers Ravens play, it's intensified that much more. It's like taken up that next level. But this year, it just feels, okay, both of these teams are kind of on a collision course. They're both playing really good football. This is like, people are saying Steelers Ravens of like the 2010s, at least most recently.
No, yeah, I think that's the
earlier.
thing. No, you're right. Even though the Steelers have dominated the back and forth and that they're 7-1 in the last 8, the Ravens have been the team that's had the better results. They've gotten a little bit further in the playoffs. They've been able to win the division. The Steelers haven't won the division since 2020. So there's some some angst. And again, like you're saying, back in the day, it used to be Steelers, Ravens, and then the rest of Ohio just figured it out. And right now, that's how it looks in this division. And so there's a lot of excitement for how these two will play out. And I think there's also like the curiosity of how these two teams will test, right? Because the Ravens defense hasn't been good. The offense has been really good. The Steelers have been a more balanced team, but everyone's wondering, okay, how real are these version of the Steelers? Because the Steelers have been that team hovering just above 500. They got 10 wins last year. They've been doing, but how can they be this 7-2 team in the second half of the season like they were in the first half? And I get everyone wanting to see what's going to happen 1 o'clock Sunday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It kind of feels like we are going to really learn a lot about both of these teams and kind of get those bearings of, okay, which one is really going to be the contender? And I still think these are two really solid football teams that are going to make it to the postseason and both hopefully have some postseason success, but especially the Steelers, obviously. But I just think that like this is going to be one of those games where we learn a lot about both teams and you can kind of say, okay, this is where the Steelers find themselves in the AFC. Are they that top tier now? Hey, you beat the Ravens, you're up there with the Chiefs and the Bills, or okay, it was, whatever the result ends up being, okay, it ended up like leveling out a little bit more. I personally think though that this is going to be, we're going to learn a lot about the Steelers in a good way this week, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
We'll get to that right now, in fact, because I want to talk about one of the things that I think has to happen if the Steelers are going to win this game, and that involves the defense. Because if the defense is giving up big points, the Ravens get to play the style of football that they like, and then it's going to force the Steelers offense to kind of step out of its shell a little bit. Not that the Steelers offense can't score. They're averaging 30.3 points per game with Russell Wilson. But it's obvious they still want to come at from a balanced perspective. They don't want to have to get into a sling the rock type of mode where they're not able to use their full arsenal. And if they can, and here's the other thing, if they hit on offense, their defense is limiting the Ravens, that's going to play a factor. And I wanted to ask Cam Heyward about a specific thing that I saw work against them in the Giants, look a lot better in the Commanders game. And that was how they defended the QB option. And the QB option, of course, not just when the QB keeps it, but it's also the option of they can hand it off to the running back and they can take off. And listen, when it's Daniel Jones and Tyrone Tracy, that's one thing. And Tyrone Tracy ate for a lot of yards that day. And then when it's Austin Eckler and Jaden Daniels, that's another thing because those guys are even faster and they're very dangerous. But now you're talking about Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. maybe the most dangerous combo to ever put together for that kind of a thing. So I wanted to ask Cam Heyward how they've shored things up, how they've gotten better at it. And Ray Fittipaldo from the Post-Gazette, my partner there, asked about defensive discipline and gap integrity. Listen to how Cam Heyward answered those questions in the Steelers locker room on Thursday.
The Giants were able to run the ball a lot on you guys when they were using like the QB option but giving it to the running back. Is that something you guys think you've cleaned up in the past couple of weeks? Because it looked like you guys did a lot better against that when the Commanders tried it.
A little bit different. I understand Daniel Jones is a rushing option, but Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson are a little bit different body types, but definitely stresses the defense. And I think we got to be ready for all that. RPOs, zone reads, even just a drop back pass can end up as a run. So. All three levels got to be responsible. It's not just the D-line. And we got to have clear communication to fix that.
Staying disciplined is important every week, but
yes,
staying in your gaps and staying in your rush lanes this week, I would imagine, is something you guys are stressing.
Yeah, it's not like the Peyton Mannings, Phil Rivers, or the Ben Roethlisbergers, where it's just they're handing off the ball. This is more of everybody's got to be accounted for. And when the quarterback does have the ball, guys got to get a block. We stress that a lot because now they have an extra blocker, and so we got to make plays fast, and we got to make sure we have our assignment.
And so that assignment football that Cam Heyward's talking about, and they know it. I think in the games against the Ravens, they've been very sharp there. That's part of why they've done so well against Lamar Jackson. And I think it's why it's important that they put it that they showed a little bit better at that, especially with Patrick Queen in their last game, because they were able to limit Jaden Daniels from running the ball, really the Commanders at all from running the football. And if they can do that in this Ravens game and force them to be one-dimensional with Lamar Jackson being with his arm, still a dangerous threat, especially with Zay Flowers, with Mark Andrews, with the addition of Deontay Johnson and the guys that they can do there. But if you do that, you have a much better chance of catching them off guard, of catching them in a mistake than you do if you let that run game get started.
Absolutely. I mean, I think they did such a good job of limiting Jaden Daniels. I think the stats after the Commanders game, Daniels had, three rushes for 5 yards, something like that, where you look at that stat line.
Yeah.
2 for 7. You look at that, and no one has limited him in the way that the Steelers limited him last week. And I think that that's a lot of going to be the carryover here of what they're going to have to do for Lamar. It's taking that threat away. And I can't even say that because, look, Lamar, I put him on the next tier. Like, Lamar is having better numbers than his MVP season. Like, he's just on an absolute tear. The Steelers, on the same time, though, are built to beat a guy like Lamar. There is a reason the Steelers' defense is built the way that it is. It is to limit Lamar Jackson, limit Joe Burrow, these explosive quarterbacks that we're kind of seeing, but especially in the division themselves. And so back to the point I was making about Jaden Daniels, when we talked with Patrick Queen last week leading into the Commanders game, we talked to Patrick Queen too, but this was Landon Roberts as well. I had asked Landon Roberts, I said, what you talk so much about Jaden Daniels not looking like a rookie, looking like a very poised guy on offense, having, these moments that you say, this is not a guy who is his first year in the league. And I was like, how do you make him uncomfortable? How do you get him out of what he does so well? And he says, we have to play within our defense. We just have to do what we do well. Everybody has to be on their P's, their Q's, in their gaps, doing exactly what they need to do. And I think that's exactly what's going to carry over this week. And I think last week, the game that they played, yes, they gave up a lot of points, but at the same time, there's a lot to take away from there in terms of, okay, how do you stop a quarterback who is such a threat using his legs as much as he is using his arms? And using his arms, I think there's a lot that they can take away from that as they go into this massive matchup with Lamar Jackson, who, like we were saying, is playing spectacular football right now.
Yes, he is. Also, excuse my idiocy, I was reading from literally the box score of the game that's happening literally as we record this on Thursday Night Football. Jaden Daniels is 2 for 7 right now against the Eagles. He was, as you said, you were correct. He was 3 for 5 against the Steelers. So that was me. I was like, wait a second. He didn't have 3 passing yards. What is this? So yeah, that was my goof here. This is what I get for trying to produce in the background. But to Jenna's point, to my point, the Steelers defense has to be disciplined, but I think it's important. I think it's a good sign for them that they know they have to be disciplined. They have the people that have been through these battles multiple times before, guys that are getting into the plan. And I think it's a really good sign when you see a guy like Patrick Queen last week starting to play a lot better, and you're starting to see people play into it. But another factor in this, Jenna, when it comes to that passing game, they need their secondary to make plays. Joey Porter Jr. got beat pretty decently last week by Terry McLaurin a lot. He got caught for multiple penalties. Dante Jackson coming back from injury. Maybe Corey Trice will come back from injury. They need this secondary to also, when they force the Ravens to the air, they have to be on their game as well.
Absolutely. And I know there's a lot of concern with Joey Porter Jr. just after what happened last week, how many penalties, all those things. Mike Tomlin was asked on Tuesday if he's concerned at all, if there's any conversations, and he said no, because there's no pattern yet. If it's 2-3 games and it becomes a pattern, then there's going to be conversations that need to be had and things that they need to figure out. But there's, you hope, and I think that this will likely be the case, that you're going to see a bounce back week from Porter Jr. here, where last week, there were some penalties that, didn't need to take there. But I think that all of these guys, Steelers, Ravens, means that much more. They want to be, we've talked all week about that villain-like, and Mike Tomlin said there's a lot of guys on this team who are going to embrace that role. I think you're going to see that, but I think these guys want to be villains in the ways that they make plays, the turnovers that they cause, versus like the, hey, we're going to take a bunch of dumb penalties and things like that. I think that that's kind of the mindset that they're coming in with, and I think that we're going to see that a whole lot on Sunday.
We'll talk more about this matchup in a little bit here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, but we got to get to our Week 11 picks. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Jenna Harner, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, we'll remind you that today's episode is also brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. Well, with Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. We're also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. Of course, we've talked to you a lot about FanDuel Sportsbook, and here are the lines on Steelers and Ravens heading into the weekend. Steelers open the week as 3.5-point home dogs to the Ravens, but that's now moved to just 3-point underdogs. The Ravens money line has moved from -172 to now it's -180, while the Steelers have gone from +144 to +152. The over-under remains at 48.5 points. Will it be a high-scoring affair? Bet on all those options and all the sports on FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers, if you hit on your first bet of $5 or more, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. That's $150 of free bets today to new customers if you just hit on your first bet of $5 or more, only on FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Jenna Harner. We head to our Week 11 picks here, and we don't have to go over the standings. No, we don't have to go over standings this week. No.
I think we should. I think we should because I'm one game back, coming back slowly. It was it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and I'm just keeping that consistent pace. I can't even say it with a straight face. We're having fun here. We're having fun.
We are having fun here. Jenna at 98 wins. I'm at 99. But first place right now is in sole place to Steal Safe. It's first place been moving around a lot. And a lot of past years, it usually comes down to like one or two people that just go back and forth all year. There's been like 6 different people in first place throughout the season. So shout out to all we're not 384 people that have been playing with us on Locked On Steelers. Pick them on ESPN.com. Join today as well if you want to get on the fun and see if you can beat us each week. So let's get to our picks this week. Right now, as always, we skip Thursday Night Football because we're usually recording right around that time, and here we are recording as that game goes on with the Commanders currently in a 7-0 lead. Might be 7-3 if they make this field goal. But let's get into some of these other picks. We start with one of the more lopsided lines of the week, and as always, all our lines come from FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America, and we look at Lions Jaguars. The Lions are 13.5-point favorites. And Jenna, not only will I take the Lions, I'll take the points too. I think that's not enough for me. The Lions are going to lay a whooping on them.
This is going to be like, does anybody remember what the Lions did to Dallas?
Jeez.
I would say Dallas is a better team than the Jags. Mac Jones is playing again. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is still hurt. Give me Lions by more than 2 touchdowns.
I'm right with you there. NFC North showdown, Packers at Bears. A little bit ago, I was starting to feel the Bears. I was like, maybe there's something there. That feeling's gone. Packers are going to whoop these guys. Give me the Packers and the points. 5.5 isn't enough. I'm taking Green Bay on the road.
You and I are exactly on the same page because I think like when the Bears played in London and then they went into their bye, there was some momentum there. Caleb Williams was playing well. And now all I'm seeing all over Twitter the last week is no one helping Caleb Williams up and the Patriots having to do that. Where's your offensive line? I like Green Bay in this one by a lot.
Same here. Moving on, Rams at Patriots. Rams 4.5-point road favorites here. Look, the Rams haven't been great this year, but they're starting their bounce back, and I think that's a really good sign for them right now. The Patriots did get that win over the Bears, but they're not a good team. They're 3-7 right now. The Rams at 4-5. They're trying to keep pace in the NFC West in that really cloudy picture of who's trying to fight for the division and fight for a playoff spot. Give me the Rams on the road against the Patriots.
Yeah, the Rams feel like a better team here. And granted, I know the Patriots beat the Bears last week, and so there's a lot of excitement going around. Drake May is progressing. However, I just think the Rams are a more complete team. They have a lot more weapons on offense. They distribute the ball well, and they're still kind of fighting for a potential shot at the playoffs. So give me LA here.
Browns at Saints. The Saints are 1.5-point home favorites here. I've been back and forth about this one, but I feel like the Saints, they were able to kind of get off the schneid with a big win against the Falcons at home last week. I don't think the Saints are going to play some amazing football. I just think the Browns are also a bad football team, and this is going to be an ugly game, but give me the Saints in a close one, though I got to admit I'm a bit of a flipping a coin here.
I keep going back and forth with this one. And initially I had the Browns, but I do think I'm going with the Saints just because of the fact that their injury picture is getting better. I think this is one of the first weeks that they don't have like double-digit players on the injury report that are going to be out or are going to be missing time. So I'm going New Orleans, but this is a coin flip. I don't feel confident in either of these teams. This one might end in a tie.
You know what? That would be kind of fitting if it did end in a tie with how bad these teams are. The Vikings are 5.5-point road favorites at the Titans. The Titans have been a bad team. The Vikings have definitely cooled off. They're not the same Minnesota Vikings that were dominant in their winning their first, I think it was their first 5 of the season. They lost 2 straight, but now they've won 2 straight, and they've done so against AFC South teams. I'll take them to continue that trend and beat the AFC South teams. I'll take the Vikings on the road here.
What a run for them. Just looking at the schedule, it's 3 AFC South teams in a row. That is kind of interesting, just the way that it all fell. I like Minnesota here. I think Sam Darnold has not been playing his best football that we've seen over the last little stretch here, but if anybody can kind of turn things around and still help them find ways to win, even when your quarterback is not playing the best football, it's Kevin O'Connell. So I like the Vikings here. I think they're moved to 8-2, which is crazy.
which is crazy to think, right? But hey, they're doing their job. Colts at Jets. Jets are 3.5-point home favorites here, and I don't know what's happening with the Colts. Frankly, I don't think anyone does. 1 week they're starting Anthony Richardson. The next week he can't start. He's taking himself out of the game. They're starting Joe Flacco. Now they're starting Anthony Richardson. I don't know what's going to happen. All that back and forth, as bad as the Jets have been, give me the New York Jets at home. I think they find a way to win.
Ooh, I'm going with the Colts.
Okay.
I know I want to laugh because I was like so set on tweeting this earlier this week, and then it just kind of got away from me. But to me, the Colts quarterback situation has been that episode of The Office where it's like snip, snap, snip, snap. That's what this quarterback situation is, and how it's been horrendously handled by the front office there. That being said, I think for Richardson, there's a lot of wanting to prove himself and wanting to prove people right that they made the right decision by having him, not only drafted him, but starting him in this game over Joe Flacco. I think that they also lost to a solid Bills team last week. So I like the Colts bouncing back here. I don't trust the Jets at all.
I don't trust the Jets either. I haven't liked what I've seen out of the Colts. And this is another game where I'm not too confident in either team, but I'll take the Jets at home. Next up, two other teams that I'm not too confident in, the Raiders at the Dolphins. Dolphins 7-point favorites at home. Jenna, they won last week. They beat the Rams and probably look the best they have all season in doing so. But they're 3-6. And each time they've won, they've followed it this year with 3 straight losses. But I'm taking them to win here. The Raiders have packed it up. They've given up on the season. I'm taking the Miami to win at home.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think the Dolphins are playing with a little bit of confidence after that Monday night win. I think that they displayed some good things. I think that there's also a lot that is still left to be desired with that Miami team. And I think I see a lot of like national talk about them, the way that everyone was talking about the Jets a couple weeks ago. Like, oh, is Miami going to get hot? Or I don't see that happening, but I see them winning this game against a Raiders team, that just not great.
Seahawks at Niners, NFC West showdown. The Niners 6.5-point favorites in this one. Jenna, I've been impressed by how the Niners have started to bounce back. Initially, I was starting to think, man, this is not their year at all. The Seahawks haven't looked great either in this situation, but now the Niners have won 3 of their last 4, including 2 in a row. Their only loss in that span to the Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the Seahawks pretty soundly in Seattle about a month ago. So now they're playing them in San Francisco. Give me the Niners and the points. I think they win at home by at least a touchdown in this one.
Yeah, the return of Christian McCaffrey, this team is just different when he is in the lineup. And I think that they're looking to kind of dig themselves out of a little bit of that early season hole that they got in. They're hovering right around 500. I think this winning trend continues. I think they're on the up here. And I think they're going to remind a lot of people why they were such a preseason favorite, because I think they're going to get back to that point.
I agree with you there. Falcons at Broncos interconference matchup in the 4:00 slate. Broncos 1.5-point favorites here. I didn't see that coming right away, but the Falcons are coming off a really bad loss. They're 2-2 in their last 4. They lost to the Saints, ending the Saints losing streak there. But the Broncos also in a 2-game losing streak, but they've lost to the Chiefs and the Ravens, 2 of the better teams in the NFL. So a lot of people are wondering where they're going to go with this one. I think that the Falcons are the team to bounce back this week, because one of these teams have to get back on the good foot. The Falcons 6-4, the Broncos 5-5. Give me Kirk Cousins figuring it out before Bo Nix, despite them being in Denver for this one.
Yeah, that's my thinking on this one too, because I do feel like this is kind of a sneaky good matchup where, I mean, we say we're going to learn a lot about a lot of teams throughout the weeks, but I think this is one that's going to tell us a lot about like the direction both of these teams are heading in. I think the Falcons are going to kind of snap this little bit of like the roller coaster ride that they've been on. I think the Broncos have been playing spectacular defense too, and that's going to create some challenges for this Falcons offense, but I think it's going to be like a low scoring, they're just scoring enough to get ahead and stay ahead kind of thing. So give me Atlanta here, but this one could go either way too.
The Chiefs at the Bills, while the Steelers fans are going to feel like Steelers-Ravens is the game of the weekend, and frankly, it's right up there. Chiefs at Bills is going to have a lot of people tuned in around the 4:00 hour, 4:25 kickoff time Eastern. But the Bills are 2.5-point favorites at home. Jenna, you've said several times this year that you cannot pick against Patrick Mahomes until he loses, and he almost lost were it not for a blocked field goal last week. Is this the week that you break stride and you ride against the Kansas City Chiefs, or are you taking them to upset Buffalo in Buffalo?
I need to take my own advice a lot, and that's something I don't do. And that is something that I'm sure this time next week I'm going to tell you was probably a bad idea. I like the Bills here. To me, on paper, the Bills are a better team. This game, as much as all week I've seen the Bills say, yeah, it's just another game, da-da-da. This is the team that has caused them so much pain in recent years that any way they can just kind of get rid of that a little bit, stick it to the Chiefs. I think the Bills win. I don't think the Chiefs are going to drop enough to lose that number 1 seed. But for the Bills, this is hey, we can do our best to kind of capture that number 1 seed here. So I like Buffalo, but I am so excited to see this game and how it plays out.
Absolutely. I'm going to be trying to finish my podcast as soon as the game's over so I could get to see this game in its full glory. I'm with you, though. I'm taking Buffalo in Buffalo. If this was in Kansas City, I might be picking differently here, but I think the Bills can get the job done at home. I also think the Chiefs, not that this means that they're a bad team, but they've won a lot of close games recently. That blocked field goal last week, the touchdown, the 6-point game against the Buccaneers, a 7-point game against the Raiders, the 7-point game against the Chargers, the 5-point game against the Falcons, the 1-point game against the Bengals, the 7-point game against the Ravens. They've been playing it close all season. I feel like it's gonna peel back against them. I think Josh Allen is gonna have a big day in this one, but watch out for that Chiefs defense. They are nasty. Wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong, but I'm going Buffalo. We had the Sunday Night Football, another big game to watch. Bengals at Chargers. Chargers are 1.5-point favorites, and this is a 6-3 Chargers team that all of a sudden they're right up in that conversation with, wild card teams. If they weren't in the division with the Chiefs, they might be a division leader right now. And one of those teams the Steelers would have to watch out for seeding wise. Give me the Chargers. I think their defense is good. I think their offense is better than the Bengals defense. And I think their defense is good enough to keep up with the Bengals offense that they find a way to win this one.
I'm surprised because I've seen so many people pick the Bengals in this game, and I don't know, is it just a little bit of the bias? We've seen the Bengals on national TV a lot. We've seen what Joe Burrow has done a lot recently. The Chargers are a very sneaky, solid team. Yeah. And they're, again, kind of a little flying under the radar here. I love what Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, I love I don't know if you saw all the videos this week of like their relationship and kind of all the back and forth things, but Jim Harbaugh has Justin Herbert playing some solid football here, and I think that the Chargers having this home field advantage, I think Joe Burrow is going to put up a lot of points, but I think the Chargers defense is going to limit him in ways that he hasn't been limited recently.
Lastly, Monday Night Football, Texans at Cowboys. This probably looked great not too long ago, but the Cowboys have fallen apart. Dak's on IR. Give me the Texans. They are 7.5-point favorites. I do not care. They'll take that and the points.
I like Houston in this game too. Dallas is just all sorts of what the heck is going on, and things are spiraling out of control. So, yeah, I like Houston in this one here, even though they're on the road.
All those odds and lines came from FanDuel.com. Go to FanDuel.com to experience the number one sportsbook in America. When we come back, it's Steelers-Ravens times. What are our keys to the offense? What are the keys to the game? And how do we see this game playing out all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast? But first, I want to remind you the show is brought to you by Hillsdale College as well. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through some mind-numbing content for hours and hours. Spend your time wisely and improve yourself. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, offers more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, Intro to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so many more lessons. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Jenna Harner. Jenna, let's talk real quick about the offense before we get to our predictions here. What's the biggest thing you need to see again with the Steelers offense against the Ravens to give them for you to feel confident that they're going to win this game?
I want to see more consistency and just them build on what we've seen from them the last week. It feels like every week we've seen them take a step forward. We've seen them, and sometimes it's been a big leap, sometimes it's been a little small leap. But I think what's worked so well for them is the way that Russell Wilson has distributed the ball, where we're seeing the run game getting going. We're seeing him get Najee Harris involved out of the backfield, but then you're seeing Pat Freiermuth scored touchdowns. George Pickens scored touchdowns. Mike Williams scored touchdowns. And again, Najee Harris last week too. You're going to need that full, complete, your offense working exactly the way that you need it to, because that's the way that you're going to compete against this Ravens team. They showed us last week that this is an offense that can put up points and that doesn't have to rely on their defense to get things done. If you can continue that this week and put up 30 points, 30 plus points against this Ravens defense, which I think is a very reasonable thing to ask of this offense, there's going to be a lot of consistency there and more just mistake-free football. I feel like we haven't seen a lot of those like penalties that have plagued this offense where it's like holding, go back 10 yards, kills the drive. There hasn't been enough of that to be insanely noticeable the way it was a little earlier in the season.
I agree. And if you had asked me yesterday, and we talked about it with Kevin Ostreicher on Crossover Thursday, he does Locked On Ravens. And I said one big key for the Steelers is to get the tight ends going. Why? Because the Ravens have statistically been the worst at covering tight ends this year. They're giving up the most receptions, the third most receiving yards to tight ends. And that's why Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington are a big factor in this game. But I'm going to look somewhere else right now. I'm going to say the Steelers offensive line, because they had a really good game against the Commanders. They weren't able to open up as much of the ground game, but they were able to protect Russell Wilson. Broderick Jones had his best game of the year. Zach Frazier looked like he hadn't missed a beat. Mason McCormick. I asked Arthur Smith about that group, those group of 3 young linemen, and he likes where they're going. He especially thinks that Broderick Jones is taking a step forward. If that group takes a step forward in this game, Jenna, and they are able to run the ball on the Ravens, it is going to put them in a really bad spot. That being the Ravens defense, because I do think that this Steelers team, if they're balanced, then that passing defense that's struggling for the Ravens, they're going to be on life support, because they're going to have to also be worrying about the run. They can't pin their ears back on the pass rush. They can't depend on certain things. They'll be caught more off guard and more in play action. And I think that's the key this week. If the offensive line dominates the line of scrimmage, Jaylen Warren did appear with a back injury. We'll see what that means for his playing time on Sunday. But Najee Harris looks fully ready to go. They got Cordero Patterson back. So I think that's a big part of this. Can the Steelers offensive line dominate the line of scrimmage, or at least not lose it enough in certain situations to protect Russell Wilson, but also get this run game going? That's my X factor for the offense.
Yeah, and just this game does feel like, because this is how these two teams play, it's going to be won or lost in the trenches. And I think we know the level of intensity from both sides of the Steelers' offensive lines and defensive lines and what they want to come into and what they want to prove in this game. But it is going to be, to me, whichever team can have that more control in the trenches is going to come away with a win.
Absolutely. All right. Without further ado, let's get to our predictions here. Jenna, give us how you see this game playing out, what you see as your turning point, and your final score prediction for Steelers-Ravens.
All right. Well, I'm going the Steelers. I think they're going to win this game. I know people were thrilled last week that I was wrong, and I'm happy I was wrong too. I'm going Steelers 34-27. I think this is going to be another high-scoring game just based on how good the Ravens offense is playing. Now, granted, some of the defenses they played have not been up to the level of the Steelers defense. So I'm excited to kind of see if water finds its level a little bit here. But to me, I think we've seen that the Steelers offense can put points up. They don't have to rely on their defense to make that big play, make that big takeaway. However, I do think you're going to see some big takeaways here just because it's a home game. Renegade's going to be going. I think Renegade will work again this week. I don't know if they're, mark my words on that one. But I think that this is going to be kind of that back and forth where we see both of these teams kind of feeling each other out, some early field goals. There's going to be that bend but not break. But I do think there is going to be a point where kind of the floodgates are going to open. And if the Steelers, again, are controlling things in the trenches, especially offensively, if they're able to run the football well and able to get the Ravens kind of out of sync in what they do, then I think this is going to be very beneficial. I also think it's going to be a matter of how long is this defense going to be able to limit Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, because I think the Bengals a week ago did a phenomenal job in taking them out of the first half of the game. But can you do that consistently, especially when, like Mike Tomlin talked about, just the attrition and how much a guy like Derrick Henry going up against him play after play can really wear on you? So that's going to be a big thing for me too, is how can this defense hold up against a guy like Derrick Henry as well as limiting Lamar Jackson. But this is going to be a fun game is what I'm really trying to say here.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be a fun game. I like some things that the Steelers have going through them. Looking at this matchup and looking at the way things have gone for the Steelers this season. They won 3, then they lost 2, then they won 4. This feels like it's the right time of the season for the Steelers to drop 1 and go on another run of some big games with the Browns, Bengals, and Browns, and back-to-back in 3 straight weeks after that. But I look at this matchup, and I can't help but think there are several things that favor the Steelers right now. One, the Ravens themselves, they've struggled at defending the pass. They've struggled against, and the Steelers, they've shown they can hit big plays in the passing game, and that's where the Ravens struggle the most. I think is defending those big plays. I think this is a week for Russell Wilson to go off. I think it's a week for the pass to set up the run, and if that starts to happen, they start putting up the points. And like you said, this Steelers defense, I think, is built for what the Ravens like to do. If this was a prime Chiefs defense, like prime Chiefs offense, like how it was, when they had Tyreek Hill and they were at their best, not the Chiefs offense right now, I think this would be different. I think that then the Steelers defense would be like, okay, this is a real test of game. But this is an offense they know how to beat. This is an offense they've faced time and time again that they've limited with Lamar Jackson, even when he's healthy, even when he's weapons available. They've also limited Derrick Henry several times before. So I think this is a tailor-made situation for the Steelers to go out in a playoff atmosphere, much like they did last week, and deliver a big win. I think the turning point comes when Lamar Jackson starts to try to do a little too much. Cam Heyward gets in the backfield, knocks the ball out of his hands. TJ Watt scoops it up, and that leads to a turnover and some quick points by the Steelers offense to put the Ravens behind it. But we always know, too, the Ravens and the Steelers, it goes down to the wire. So give me a close one here. I have the Steelers winning 26-20 at home, advancing to 8-2, and it's going to be a tight one. It's going to be back and forth. It's going to be big plays, but I do think the Steelers find a way to edge the Ravens out and hold on to first place in the AFC North.
Let's have some fun. Let's just this is what this is what this rivalry is meant to be. And again, we're going to know a lot more about the direction these two teams are heading, who's going to be the king of the North, because I think whoever wins this game likely holds on to the crown. You never know what can happen. It's every week. But to me, this is kind of that, all right, we're establishing who's the top dog right now.
Absolutely. That's what this is. Who is the top dog in the AFC North? Find out 1 p.m. Sunday at Acrisure Stadium. Jenna and I will both be there covering it live. Jenna, thanks so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Well, thank you for having me. As always, it's such a pleasure to be here on Fridays. You can find me on Twitter at Jenna Harner 11, Instagram, Jenna_Harner, locally, WPXI Channel 11. We will have all your Steelers Ravens coverage from Acrisure Stadium and from our studios on Sunday. Join us for the Black and Gold Zone 15 minutes after Sunday Night Football ends, either on Channel 11 if you are in the Pittsburgh TV market, or online on our live stream as well. So stay tuned. Got a lot coming your way.
A lot coming your way. Jenna, thanks for joining us as always here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thank you all for joining us as well. I'm Chris Carter, your host here. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm also on Blue Sky now. At Carter Critiques is how you find me. You can also find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of the daily Monday through Friday episodes. Also, be sure to read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. The backyard brawl of basketball, Pitt, West Virginia, is tonight. I'll be covering that live, as well as Pitt Clemson on Saturday, and then Steelers Ravens on Sunday, and then more Pitt basketball on Monday. It's four straight games of sports that I'll be covering. It's going to be a wonderful weekend to get all of our Steelers coverage here on the Locked On Steelers podcast right here.